Okay, so here's my theory. My theory is that the soul is pretty much what the story of Jesus points to. Born pure of a virgin, miraculous, rejected and buried, yet still lives. The soul is the infinite, eternal part of us. There's no replacement for it. Without it, humanity is lost. So, for instance, born pure of a virgin, we tend to think that this, characterizes the story of Jesus, and the story of Jesus is literal. It's okay to take that story literal, and I'm not saying that there's no validity in taking it literally, but I'm here to propose that there is a deeper or higher interpretation of the story. So born pure of a virgin could refer to the infinite eternal part of us, which is unconditional, right? The qualities of the soul are of another order. They don't depend on events in time. They don't depend on circumstances or situations or the man Jesus coming down to save us. And also, let's take into consideration that from the very beginning, if we believe that Jesus came to save us, first of all, we're judging ourselves as sinners. We're judging ourselves as no good. We're judging ourselves as worthless. This is unconscious. Most people don't think about this. But the truth is, as soon as we accept Jesus as our Savior, we're telling ourselves that we're worthless without Jesus. So there's an unconscious lack of self-worth there, right from the beginning. And we don't realize this because we're too busy hanging on to something which we think is going to bring us the feeling of being good enough. Our self-worth is dependent on something outside ourselves. That's not self-worth. That's worth dependent on believing in Jesus or what Jesus did or events in time and history. The soul is unconditional. All right? This is something different. It doesn't matter what happens, because what happens is the purity of the soul means it's always available. There's no time where it's not available. It's right here, right now, in the present moment, which is the only moment. There's no time. There's timelessness. And what happens is a lot of people say, oh, I'll wait till I die to get to heaven. And that's a very grave error. Right? This is a God of the living, not a God of the dead. So you can't experience God when you're dead. It's meant for life. He came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. So the purity of the soul refers to the unconditional nature that it's always here. There's no criteria. Well, let me take that back. The only criteria is that we become aware of it. So it's almost just a peeling of the personality, unraveling of the personality to see what's already there. So it's a different way of looking at it. So the purity, the miraculousness, okay, the soul is a miracle in proportion to infinity, all right? And I'm not exaggerating this. This is a very gross understatement, all right? The soul is oneness. And consider the personality and its divisions. It's very divisive. It's always, good, bad, right, wrong, weak, strong. It always has these dichotomies, but the soul is oneness. It's a miracle beyond all understanding, and it's a huge, huge realization when we finally recognize that. And the miracles also refer to, let's say, Jesus turning water into wine. For me, I experienced that when I stayed with that empty part of myself, and I stayed with it. I kept trying to jump in there. I tried to throw myself into hell because I wanted to die. I thought that was what hell was that emptiness. But the more I jumped into that and the more I stayed with it, the bigger the realization was for me that this emptiness turned into a presence. It's not emptiness. And that's Jesus turning the water into wine. That emptiness is not an emptiness, it's a presence. Also, my eyes were opened wide as infinity. I became the blind man who was healed by Jesus. That was me. I was the lady hunched over for 35 years, and when I touched this infinite eternal part of myself, I was made to stand upright. That was me. I also experienced the lady who said, if I could just touch the hem of his robe, I will be healed. As soon as I got close to this part of myself, I was healed from an unconscious lack of self-worth, and I didn't even know this was a problem. It's a social issue that not a lot of people are aware of. But we need to be aware that there's another way of interpreting these scriptures. So we've got born pure of a virgin, miraculous, rejected and buried refers to the rejection and burial. Now, the soul is very scary. It's a very difficult thing. It's not readily digestible by the majority of people. But the truth is, the rejection and burial refers to the fact that it's been not included in the Trinity, right? And people judge it as sinful. But the problem is the soul is not sinful. The soul that's really biting of the forbidden fruit of judgment, which is the downfall of mankind. And mankind doesn't know when to stop judging. So the rejection and the burial refers to the soul being dismissed, trampled upon, crucified, treated as not good and to be avoided. Yet it still lives. So we get the basic idea here that the story of Jesus is actually a parallel to the soul. It's not a coincidence that these things line up like this. Born pure of a virgin, miraculous, rejected and buried, yet still lives. This is about the soul. It's not about the literal interpretation of the man named Jesus.